wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. About 10 minutes or so. So this is going to be, you could say, a little bit an informal discussion before we pray, and then afterwards we'll discuss the lecture I had prepared more in depth. So, subhanAllah, it's been quite a fascinating trip coming to Pakistan. As I tell everybody, I arrived I brought the war with me, apparently, with India, as I was arriving, and I was based in Sialkot, and so I was right next to the Indian border when things started to kick off. So I'm very good at picking my times. But one of the interesting things that I found in Pakistan is it's not quite like what many UK Pakistanis told me about. Right? They lied to me. They misrepresented. I heard some theories about this. Mostly, I think a lot of UK Pakistanis, they come from rural areas. So when they go back to their family, and their family takes them to some rural village or farm and so on. I'm in Portugal. We're from a farm, a rural area ourselves. So nothing wrong with that. But they get to see a rather less developed side of Pakistan. And all their complaints about Pakistan was not what I see when I went to Lahore, when I went to Islamabad. Even Sialkot is actually more developed now than it was, I heard, in the past. So I saw a lot of development, mashallah, and I saw a lot of khair from the people. Despite the fact that I hear a lot of moaning from the UK Pakistanis about corruption and backward thinking and so on, I actually see quite a notable difference. I see humbleness from people in Pakistan. I see them attentive to their work compared to other places, Muslim countries I've been to. And I see a strong desire, strong love for Islam here in Pakistan. So much so that even the different rulers here in Pakistan fear changing some laws and things lest someone shoot them because they know laws from Islam to non-Islam, although that's not always the case, but they fear making some radical changes, making Pakistan more secular because the people would protest against this. Whereas you don't see this in countries like Saudi Arabia, meant to be the birthplace of Islam. You don't see that pushback from the people. So there's a very strong love of Islam here. And I think due to the nature of the people here, you don't get things like absolute dictatorships that you get in the Arab world. The Pakistanis don't tolerate. You might have, a head general leader, what have you, but nowhere near as dictatorial as you get in some of the Arab countries that I've seen. So I've seen a lot of khair here, and I've seen a lot of potential. When I come to a Muslim country, I try to look at the glass half full, not half empty. You know that phrase? So I try to see the potential. What could these people do? Rather than just complaining, these people, look at this, look at this. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the person that says the people are destroyed, which is an Arabic expression, like they are defeated, finished. The people are destroyed. That person is the most destroyed of the people. And what I tend to see in the Muslim world, many countries, is this people complaining, our countries are like this, our countries are like that. There's no hope. It's the Yom Kippur is coming, next week or something. It's don't need to do anything. Don't do anything. Just wait for it to come, and that's it. Because you can't change anything. There's no improvement possible in any of this. But what I see in Pakistan, what I've seen, I'm going to visit Turkey soon. But inshallah, I've seen from my studies of Turkey. I've seen my studies of Malaysia and even my studies of Iran. Even they're much more industrialized, more developed than the Arab world. If you exclude the oil countries, the oil Gulf countries, but they don't make the stuff, they just buy it, right? You guys make it. You make your own weapons here. You make your own tanks. You make your own jets. You make your own nuclear weapons, right? Turkey does too. Iran does too. It even has a spaceport. Iran has a spaceport? Only 10 countries, last time I checked, maybe that might have changed, but only 10 countries in the world have a spaceport where they make your rocket, your satellite, and you shoot it into space. Right? Most countries you have to maybe pay to get a rocket from NASA or a rocket from Russia in, I think it's Kazakhstan, in Baikonur, and they shoot it up for you. You pay them. You make the satellite, but they make the rocket and they send it up. Iran does it themselves. I mean, sure, it's not better than NASA, but it's a spaceport, subhanAllah. And that's something to be said. Malaysia as well, and Indonesia going into high-tech, microchips and things. They're going into that market. So you see, I see a lot of khair from these countries, and I see the potential that Pakistan, as well as these other countries, could lead the ummah, maybe be the leading states that reunite the ummah. And to quote an athar of a Sahabi, where a Sahabi saw an Arab guy, he was abusing or being rude to an Ajmi, a non-Arab guy, and the Sahabi said, you will have arrogance now because Islam came to you and you took it to the non-Arabs. But there will come a time when the non-Arabs will bring Islam to you. Is this done? Or is it in 4 minutes? Oh, just someone's phone. And so, inshallah, I see that possibility. So the question really is not about, do you believe in Islam? Do you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I'd say the question is, do you believe in yourselves? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not burden a servant more than what he can bear. And he's given you Islam. So Allah thinks you can manage Islam because he's given it to you. So the question is, do you yourselves think that you can bear that and you can take it and you can carry the flag of Islam and you can be the leaders of the revival of Islamic civilization, bringing back Islamic civilization, carrying the banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? So, and this is what me and my fellow colleagues and everyone I've met, really wonderful brothers I've met here, and what I can see from their work is what we all want. And alhamdulillah, I'm very blessed and I'm thankful to Allah that He gave me the opportunity to come to Pakistan and see it in person and meet the people in person and get an idea in person. And inshallah, I'll go to Turkey soon, later this year, inshallah. But I would say, of all the Muslim countries, Pakistan and possibly Turkey, though Turkey has some, how should we say, there are some issues and challenges in Turkey because of ultra-secularist Kemalists, right? It's a bit of a problem, more of a problem in Turkey. Here, there's those who just purely love Islam, I think, are the dominant people. So I think I can see the revival of the Muslim world coming from here. And I think there's a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said he feels a cool breeze coming from Al-Hind, right? So he feels a cool breeze. And whenever the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has praised a people, we've always seen great things from them, amazing things from them, right? Wherever he praised the soft-heartedness of the Yemenis. And out of all the Arab world, Yemenis seem to be having more of an affinity to what's happening in Gaza. They're seeing more, they're feeling more empathy compared to their other Arab country neighbors to what's happening in Gaza. Or when the Rasulullah in a hadith said to have praised the people of Syria. Right? We see out of all the countries in the Muslim world, the Syrians actually were the only ones who've actually taken down their tyrant. But also in the past, they were the basis of the armies of Islam, was the Syrian soldiers, right? And we also see the Prophet Muhammad, when concerning the Turks, he said to the Muslims not to fight the Turks unless the Turks initiate war, because they are a fighting nation. And subhanAllah, look what happened. The Turks became Muslim, and then they led the civilization of Islam. So whenever the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has praised the people or mentioned the good attributes about them, we always see something amazing from them. And even though the Muslims of Al-Hind, there's been amazing history here, but there's more to come, inshallah, I think. So inshallah, you guys need to ask yourselves, are you going to be the ones that are going to bring that about? Or are you going to leave it for another generation? I think you guys are going to be the ones. Inshallah. Okay, is it wait for Maghrib then? Let's prepare for Maghrib. I hope, may Allah accept your prayers and your salah and strengthen you in this deen and strengthen you in love and worship and closeness to Him, inshallah. Ameen. Is the mic okay? I can hear like a slight feedback. Is that all right? There's a slight echoey feedback. Is that not? Just to reduce sensitivity, I think maybe. Just so it doesn't annoy you guys. My voice is annoying enough to many people. So no need to add to it. Okay, Bismillah. Okay, can everyone hear me okay? It's all good? Okay, Bismillah. So I have, first and foremost, I know people have referred to me as Sheikh throughout this trip and journey. I'm just a simple da'i, and no more, no less. You can call me, I prefer to be called brother, but I might tolerate ustad, but my preference is brother. So that's number one. Number two is, I'm not just here to teach you about some subjects, and maybe you already know the subject anyway, about the Sharia and obviously secularism, liberalism, but revival of the Muslim world is also a change of mindset, not just knowledge. So the change of mindset is, I don't want you to blindly accept everything I tell you, and I don't want you just to say, oh, he has a British accent, he must know what he's talking about, or it must be true what he says. No, don't. Not everything in a British accent it means it's true. Or good. And if you need more convincing, I can just say, Teen Guna Lagan, Dina Pariga. That's from a movie, I think, where I think that a British actor was like a colonial movie, isn't it? Colonial time movie. Anyway, so I want you to listen to this lecture and try to prove me wrong. Try to find some fault in my logic. Try to find something where you think, well, that doesn't sound like what I know about history. And if you want, you can chat GBT it as I speak. But I want you guys to prove me wrong. I prefer debates than lectures. I know my career kind of started out in debates, but I use debates to teach. I don't use debates to score points or win or just to pander my ego. The reason why I prefer debates than lectures is because you will learn far more from seeing someone from the other side try to refute the truth, and the truth still winning, than someone on a lecture just telling you what to believe or what is their perspective or doctrine or belief. And not only that, but you yourself will know how to defend the truth better once you see it in a debate being argued, being defended. So I prefer debates. And Allah knows we've tried to reach out to a number of liberals in Pakistan to debate me on their vision for Pakistan. Well, I say their vision, it's the West's vision for Pakistan. They're just the, what's that Urdu phrase? Chamche? Right? Cheerleaders. Yeah, the cheerleaders, right? They're just, the spoons, I don't know what that's referring to. So, and I've often found when you debate Desi liberals and Desi secularists, they're much lesser quality than their teachers in the West, the philosophers in the West, which me and my colleagues in the Dawah, we debate them. The guys who actually teach that stuff, the guys who are at the fountain of it, rather than the waters that go down the gutter, down the stream. Okay? So, anyone can sound convincing when no one is challenging them on the panel. Anyone can sound convincing. So please challenge me. In fact, I'll be disappointed if you don't. Yeah, so don't disappoint me, all right? Okay. So, now there's even more echo. Is there an echo? It's just a slight echo. That's it, all right. Yeah, okay, should be okay. Yes, all right? Okay, alhamdulillah. When I was younger, we'd see these Islamic lectures and they would put a deliberate echo to make it sound more important, right? It just became annoying after. I said, okay, I can hear it, and I need to hear it 3, 4, 5 times after every sentence. Okay, Bismillah. So I was asked to discuss the Sharia versus secularism. But secularism is like, you know, when if you see painting a wall, you have to put one coat of paint, and then you put a second coat of paint on top of that, because one coat doesn't stick, you have to put that second coat. So secularism is like the first coat of paint, and with the intent is liberalism is the second coat of paint. It needs that secular undercoat first. And when the colonial Western powers created the current regimes in the Muslim world, or the current states, they did it by either they directly would create it, they'd make the borders, they'd define those borders, draw it up, and they would make sure that those that they taught in the new education systems that they created would be the ones who become in power. And they perpetuate that by basically all the rich elites send their kids to my country, to America, to Canada, where they have a liberal education, and then they're ready to come back to the Muslim world and rule you guys. So when the West did that, they realized they couldn't make the Muslim world liberal straight away for 2 reasons. One, the people didn't believe in liberalism as an ideal anyway. And 2, if you have a full and fair election in most Muslim countries, the people will tend to elect Islamic parties that want to implement the full Sharia and undo all the Western laws and systems and so on and so forth. And they can't have that. You can't have the will of the people prematurely, as they'll say. So instead, they selected and tolerated and allowed secular dictators. Okay? And the secular dictator has just one job, which is to suppress Islam and contain it and make it into just a private religion long enough for people to forget to call to Islam. With 2-3 generations later, they'll forget about the Sharia, what it means, the law, and then they'll just want liberalism, and then they'll be ready for liberalism, and then they can see it happen. And if you're saying to me, well, no one's said it just yet, but maybe you're thinking, Abdullah, that seems like a bit of a, is that speculation? Was that conspiracy theory? Was there any evidence for this, what you're saying? Oh, yes, there very much is. Lord Cromer, who was the British appointed governor for Egypt, and he wrote a book. It was published in 1919. It's free online. It's called Modern Egypt. Lord Cromer, Cromer, or you can go to my website. I put some snippets of what he said in that book. It's a big book. It talks about the British project in Egypt and what's happened, things and how it had panned out and all this stuff. But Lord Cromer shocked me with how well he understood the Muslim mindset that he was trying to change and what they were going to change it into, and the new power elites that they were going to create. I was shocked. He said that these Europeanized Muslims, this is his term, Europeanized Muslims, because the word Western wasn't popular back then, so they just called it Europeanized. Europeanized Muslims, he said that they lose their Islam through the Western education system, and they become, at best, agnostic, as in, they don't know Islam, they don't say that Islam is false, they just don't know if it's true, and they don't know anything, but it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to their lives. They have a materialistic-based life that they want to have. And he said that they were going to create a secular system because what the West cannot allow is the Egyptians to go back to the Sharia and the Islamic law. They cannot let that happen. So they said they need to have these Europeanized Muslims that will establish a very tough and hard regime for now. And then he said that he saw there were some Europeanized Muslims in Egypt who were liberals, maybe a small liberal party developing. He said, that's nice. It's premature, but maybe in the future we'll be ready for it. So he said it, right? And you can go to my website, abdullahandalusi.com. I had an article on Lord Cromer, just type in Cromer if you like, or Lord Cromer. And I put a few snippets of the things that he said in his book, because his book was talking about the history of modern Egypt and a whole bunch of things. But anyway, so secularism is all about separating the deen of Islam from the affairs of the people until it's ready for full-on liberalism. And that's the project throughout the Muslim world. In Saudi Arabia, it's no surprise. I was not surprised when we see Mohammed bin Salman implementing or rolling back Islamic laws, allowing nightclubs, allowing alcohol, allowing music festivals, free mixing, and a whole bunch of things. The hijab is no longer mandatory anymore. And soon, not even the abaya or anything else underneath, to some extent. I don't know. Maybe bikinis, they'll say you must at least minimum, right? But they are slowly rolling back. This is not a brand new thing. This is only because Saudi society was ready for it. Not that the average Saudi likes it, just that they won't protest against it or fight against it or uprise against it or make a fuss. That's all. They don't need everyone to agree, just that you don't protest or push back against the government. That's all. Before, they couldn't do that because they would worry that there'd be an uprising and so on. But now Saudi citizens are docile enough, are overfed and overpaid enough, in government subsidized jobs and no taxes, of course, enough to just accept that project. And in Pakistan, I haven't really encountered yet in person Desi liberals. I might have seen a few individuals in cafes that looked like they were kind of liberal-esque. But I've encountered Desi liberals in the UK. And I did a debate in 2010 at the School of Oriental and African Studies, which is a college of the University of London, otherwise known as SOAS for short, where I was invited to a debate on the Pakistani blasphemy law, funnily enough, and the killing of Salman Taseer. And they was having a debate on that discussion. And they invited me on randomly. I was the only non-Pakistani individual on the panel. I think they thought I would come in and just be like this, a typical Maulvi Saab who'd say, it's haram to, obviously the killing of Salman Taseer, this is, you shouldn't do this, you should obey the leader and what have you. No, I didn't say it was good. I just came on and said, I said something they didn't like, which is, if you don't like vigilante violence is when people take the matters into their own hands. If you don't like this for Pakistan, then it's a simple solution, very simple solution. All you have to do is create 100% Islamic system and state with laws that people have confidence in. It's applied consistently to everybody, and people won't take law into their own hands. The law itself and the state, people would be confident enough, they'd let the state take care of it. They'd let the state take care of these things. They wouldn't take matters into their own hands. And of course, they didn't like that. And the second thing I said, because these Desi liberals were liberals and therefore they were secular, I said, if you want a secular Pakistan, or you want a secular system here, I have good news for you, right? There already exists a very large secular state. India. Why not just rejoin India then? That's a secular country. You wanted your secularism, so rejoin India then. There you go. Tafaddal. Well, like you're welcome. Oh, what's the Urdu word for you're welcome? Like, yeah, like chalo or something. Go and enjoy your rights and freedoms in India, right? As a Muslim. And of course, that made them very angry. And of course, it made them protest and say, but why not? India is a secular state. But why is it that if the prospect of Pakistan joining India brings a bead of sweat down your temple, why is that? It's because a secular system doesn't guarantee rights, right? And it doesn't guarantee fair treatment, and it doesn't guarantee protection against ethnic oppression, religious oppression, and of course, genocides too. Genocides have all happened, mostly happened, in the modern world only happened in secular states. Only happened in secular states. Nazi Germany was not a religious state, it was a secular state, just to give one example. The collapse of Yugoslavia and the genocide against Bosnian Muslims under a secular system, a materialistic system. And the list goes on and on. Even Rwanda, the genocide in Rwanda, it was between two ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. The Tutsis were a minority. It wasn't a religious state, it was a secular state. That's when the genocide happens. And of course, in India, people are saying there's a lot of indicators, a lot of ticks on the tick box list for the prerequisites, the conditions for genocide could happen very soon, against the Muslims in some way. So that's a secular state. Doesn't guarantee you rights. But then the Desi liberal might argue, as well as liberals in the West might argue, but surely in an Islamic system, you would oppress the minorities. In an Islamic system, you would persecute them, treat them differently, and genocide them too. Is that not going to be the case? And I always say no, for two reasons. One, because we're not secular, and two, because we're not democratic. And I'll explain what I mean. The word democracy has multiple meanings, so bear with me as I define it. Democracy simply means the people are the legislators. They are the rulers and the lawmakers. That's what democracy means classically. It's different from shura. Shura, the English translation would probably be on a grander scale, referendums. You could have elections. Elections is not the same as democracy, by the way. Everyone seems to forget this, right? Athens was a democracy. Ancient Greek Athens was a democracy. They never elected their leader. It would be, any citizen would be randomly selected to be the leader for 1 year, right? Because that way you could guarantee no corruption and no nepotism and no one particular family staying in power, or just three families, and it just rotates between these families, right? But if any person could randomly be selected, so the Greeks didn't elect leaders because they didn't trust elections for that, funnily enough. So Islam, we can use elections, we can use referendums, we can use public discussions and debates and so on and so forth. We can do that, but not be a democracy. The rulers can be appointed in Islam by the people appointing them, by elections, but still not be a democracy, right? Whereas I know today the word is sold to you. Say, please use it, just use this word, democracy, right? Just use it. It's harmless. It just means, the people get to have elections. No, the West has a very distinct idea with what democracy means, and it's not just elections. It's the people. It's not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the legislator. It's not him who is Ashari. You are. That's what democracy means, right? And they prefer it, right? So they don't mind if you, using your democracy, put a few cultural laws, like which we would call Islam, but they'd say, we don't mind, as long as you understand that you're doing so because that is just your current taste, right? Sure, it's your taste. Like in the West, in some secular countries, they say, we want to make sure that Muslim women, when they wear the hijab in our countries, they do so not because they believe they have to, but as a fashion choice. If it's a fashion choice, they just feel like it, that's great. We support it. Wear your hijab, no problem. As long as it's like a fashion, maybe you want to wear jeans today, maybe you want to wear a leather coat today, whatever, that's great. We don't mind you doing it as long as you know that it's the ultimate furqan, the ultimate criteria of good and bad is your desires. And that you're not doing it because you think you have to do it because that you think there's a higher power over you that requires you to do it. Right? And because of this, and you might think, well, which Western country was so interested about women's hijabs that they discussed these points? France. France did that. I remember that discussion. They made a law banning what they called religious symbols in schools. And they said the hijab is a religious symbol. But how law is made in the West is like this. They can't say, we target this religion because it goes against their non-discrimination application of law. The law must apply to everybody. So they do it in a clever way. They say, no religious symbols in schools. Applies to everybody, right? But they have only one target in mind. And we know this because all the lawmakers at the time were only discussing the hijab. We have their discussions. They discussed Muslims, right? And it reminds me of a school in India, I forget which is it Uttar Pradesh, or I forgot which state it was in, remind me, where the schools banned hijabs for girls. And they said, school is a secular place. It shouldn't be a place for religion. Teach religion at home. Right? And I said, okay, so then are you going to stop Sikh students from wearing their turban? So, oh, no, but that's because Sikhs, they must wear their turban. It's what they believe in. Oh, well, we believe that, women should have their hair covered and propriety, and of course, men have an awrah too, where it should be covered, navel to the knee. And they said, oh, that's different, right? I say, no. So they made a rule which they meant to target Muslims, but they said it was applying to everybody. But we know they made it to target Muslims. So that's what the West does. So to go back to my point, the minorities in an Islamic state, not necessarily Muslim country, they're not the same thing, unfortunately. They should be the same thing. In an Islamic state, the minorities have the best protection of any minority in the world. Why is that? Because we're not democratic. We don't say that every minority must follow the law that the majority decided. We don't believe that. The Sharia, the law of Islam applies only to Muslims. So we see, there was a Islamic scholar who was going through 10th century Iraq, right? So it's Islamic Iraq, under the time of the Caliphate, and the Khulafa, the Abbasid Caliphate. And he was going through towns and he saw there were pig farms in these towns. And he goes, that's a Christian town. Because we don't say to Christians, you're not allowed to eat pigs. You can't drink alcohol. No, that's Christians. Like, as long as they don't say it to us. Say, you go, lakum dinakum waliya deen. To you, your deen, to us, our deen. No, we're not going to force each other on this. Christians had their own law courts. Imagine a Christian law court in Islamic lands. And we know this because it's in the history books. We have records. We have records where it says two Jews come to an Islamic court. They refuse. One of them refused to go to a Jewish court because he thought he could get better terms in an Islamic court. It was a dispute between two Jewish guys, right? So we know multiple historical evidences show there was Jewish law courts, there was Christian law courts, and there might have been various regional variations of that in Al-Hind or what have you too. The mushrikeen of Al-Hind, they had their own way of practicing it. So much so that the Muslims didn't get involved in the practice of sabti, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where, if I remember correctly, it's a mushrik Indian woman who's been widowed will throw herself or be put onto the funeral pyre, the bonfire that they put for her husband, right? So she dies with her husband, basically. She's burnt to death. And Muslims, there was debate amongst Muslim scholars, like, do we get involved? Do we not get involved in this? Like, what do we do? The general majority principle was, we don't get involved, and we know this because it was still being practiced by the time the British arrived. So the Muslims didn't stop it. Right? And even though we say that's a barbaric practice, that's a horrific practice, but the rule in Islam was, you can't intervene in the deen of ghair Muslim, on those who are not Muslims. Okay, we have an agreement with them. We have a pact with them, a treaty with non-Muslims living under us. We don't interfere in their deen. The Prophet Muhammad said he guaranteed peace for the Christians of Najran, right? Their people, their blood, their life, their property, their deen, their churches. Right? So this is the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said as well that anyone who's harmed someone who's under dhimma in Arabic means like a contract or an agreement. So they are, well, in the modern world, we'd call it a contract citizen. In the modern Western countries, everyone is a contract citizen. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, anyone who's harmed someone who is from Ahl al-Dhimma is as if he's harmed me. Right? It's the same as if he's harmed me, he says. Now, how much do Muslims love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We love him more than our parents, more than our children. Right? There is nothing we wouldn't do. We would get outraged if a single hair on his head was disturbed by someone else. And yet, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you harm someone who's from Ahl al-Dhimma, it's the same as harming him. Or, there's not a narration about those who are under Dhimma. He said, if anyone oppresses them, or it takes anything from them without their consent, or even insults them, I think was the one in the translation of the Arabic. The Prophet Muhammad said, I will argue against this Muslim, argue against this person on the Day of Judgment. So the Prophet Muhammad will accuse you in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment if you even insult a non-Muslim who's living amongst us under the contract. Right. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a minority, I would love that kind of protection. I would love that kind of. I would like the majority. If I was a minority, well, I am a minority Muslim in UK as a Muslim. I would like the majority of the people to think that touching me was the same as hurting their most beloved person. I would love that. I'd feel really safe in that place. Now that is protection. That's rights. Now we know there's a verse of Quran that says La ikrah fi din. Right? Everyone knows no compulsion in religion. But there's another verse that people tend to not remember in this discussion. That there's a verse of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to translate, if Allah so willed, if he wanted to, he could make everyone in the world together under like one deen or one religion, one belief. So then who are you to force the people, right, against their will? So the Quran is telling us that it is Allah's will that mankind is not under, we don't find them under one deen. He's not, now I want to make sure this is clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say that he doesn't want people to be under one deen, or that we shouldn't invite all of humanity to be under one deen. We want this. But simply that if Allah wanted to make everyone under one deen, he would have. So it's not for you to force it. That's what he's saying. You can't force it because Allah willed it to be this way. But you should call everyone, because we would love the whole of humanity to be under one deen, and all people, all of al-nas, the people, the mankind, should be following the deen of Islam. This is from the last messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a messenger to all mankind. So yes, we would like this. But the Quran is telling us this, that if Allah had wanted it, he doesn't need you to make everybody under one deen. So you don't have to force it. Just, and then it says, and after the verse of La ikrah fi din, of course, the truth is clear from falsehood. So you don't need to force. We have confidence in the truth. We have confidence in it. We don't need to force. In the West, and in secularism, there's the idea of every human being deserves to be under liberalism. That's what they say. They call it human rights, quote unquote, which is a bit rude because we all believe in human rights, but we have different ideas of what human rights means. Right? We believe in hukuk al-ibad. We believe in the same thing, as in rights. Rights for humans. Yes, we believe this, but not your definition of rights for humans. But they say it in this very universal way. You know, like, oh, our definition is the only definition of rights for humans, right? They say it like that. And you might think, okay, so they believe everyone deserves human rights. But then you don't realize what comes next. If you believe that every person on this planet does the set of rights that you define it as, then that means you have to bring it to them, whether they like it or not. And you bring it to them with the sword, the bullet, and the bomb, if necessary. And if you say to me, Abdullah, is that not just your spin, your interpretation of it? No, their own philosophers are quite open about this discussion. John Stuart Mill, in his book on dealing with barbarous nations, or there was John Rawls. John Rawls he's passed away, but he's a more recent liberal scholar. He is the Sheikh al-Shuyukh of liberal scholars, right? John Rawls, R-A-W-L-S. Google it, please, right? They all talk about what is needed to spread liberalism and liberal values around the world. And the discussion is, John Rawls said that, well, sometimes you need to have a dictator to civilize people, or sometimes civilized people can't be, they do not have a right to live under their own laws because they're not civilized, right? So until they're capable of accepting liberalism, they don't have a right to be under their own system, right? To paraphrase what he says. He says it in his own word. Ironically, he said that in a book called On Liberty, or On Freedom, right? He said this on that book. You can check it for yourself. Actually, please do. I was surprised, because it's kind of ironic. He's saying on liberty, and then he's actually arguing that people don't deserve liberty, because he was trying to say who does deserve liberty and who are not ready for it, right? They say this. I could bring you quote upon quote upon quote, and I've done so many lectures online, and I've published. But so liberals believe in the liberal version of offensive jihad, expansionist jihad, right? Liberal jihad, basically. But they give it a different name. They call it interventionalism. We're just intervening around the world. We saw this with the war in Iraq. They said to topple dictators to create a liberal democracy in Iraq. That was one of their most recent. The only ikhtilaf amongst liberal philosophers is, does it work? That's the only debate they have. So if we go in and we impose the system on the people, will the people take it? Or are they going to fight against it? Or should we wait for them to fight against their own dictators and change their own system themselves? We give them our values, we teach them our values, we give them our culture, and we wait for them to fight against their own tyrant. Do they have to do it themselves, basically? Or do we have to intervene? Which one works? It's not about, oh no, we shouldn't interfere because it should be by consent. No, it's about purely which works. Much like there was a dossier that came out by a report by the CIA torture after the war on terror, where the CIA would use torture methods on people, which is banned in America. The police can't torture you in America. That's why they say when they arrest people, they have to read in their rights, right? You do not have to say anything, but anything you do say will be used against you in the court of law. So I can't force you to speak, so I can't torture you to force you to speak, right? But outside America, there's no law that bans it exactly, right? So that's why they use Guantanamo Bay, which is not part of America, but it's under American control, because the United States federal law doesn't apply there, but Americans can then bring prisoners there and torture them, right? That's all in Bagram in Afghanistan, or what they call black sites. So when a report was perfect, whether they like it or not, and what ends up is creating a hell. So China, Marxism, Stalinist countries, Soviet Union, those were ones that they were more advanced in becoming totalitarian. They're a bit more faster. They got to the end, to the logical conclusion first, before the rest of the West carried it with it. But the West is catching up in terms of there's cameras everywhere. In fact, the country that has the most cameras per unit kilometer is actually the UK. Per square meter, sorry, is the UK. the most cameras density in the world. They see everything everywhere. Right? So everything, and there are new laws about what you can't say all the time. They say you have free speech, except this. You can't criticize LGBT, you can't criticize transsexuals, you can't criticize this, you can't criticize that. You can't support this group or that group because we declare them to be a terrorist group, even if they're not actually violent, but we've declared it to be like this because their ideology is extremist, and there's a whole bunch of laws in the UK that restrict what you say. And it's so restrictive, it applies to me even here, right? So if I say something that goes against English laws here, or if I express support for a group that England has declared to be a prohibited group, and I say it here, I'll get arrested when I go back to the UK, and I could be sent to jail to prison for 10 years, right? Because it applies to every British citizen, wherever they are in the world. That is liberal free speech. America is slightly different. Yes, technically in America you can say a bit more, but they have other ways to make your life hell with control, make you lose your job, harass you. The state, FBI, others, and CIA can harass you and make you lose your job, make you lose your house, a whole bunch of things they can do. So they don't need to actually put you into jail to control people. And many Americans are scared to speak out. They don't. They say, I don't want to have my life ruined. Because, yeah, sure, you're not going to be put in jail, but being put in jail means nothing when you're on the street. And you can't buy anything, you can't do anything because you've got no money. You're a homeless person. Yeah. Enjoy your freedom, though. Yeah. You're free to sleep in any gutter you want, right? That's freedom, right? Oh, well, they're not in jail, so that's free speech, right? Well, no. So, in the West, because they believe that we only have this life, this means they believe that they can force people to be liberal, force people to be secular. They can support dictatorships which are secular because they say it's for the good of the future generations. So it doesn't matter if you have the most nastiest dictator ever, they say, well, at least he's secular because the alternative is worse. And what did, they call it the Arab Spring like 10 years ago. There was just demonstrations against dictatorships and other things. And then in Syria, it came into a full-blown revolution because the soldiers were actually shooting the people, and other soldiers said, that's disgusting, I can't do that. And then they started to fight against the other soldiers and became a civil war. But what did Bashar al-Assad say? Hosni Mubarak, right? Gaddafi, right? What did they all say, and the others, what did they all say to internationally? They said this on the international stage. They say, to tell the West, you need to support us. They said the same thing. They all said the same thing. If it's not us, the Islamists will get in. They'll get to power. And that tells you their real job. Their real job is stopping the rise of Islam. That's their job. That always has been. And that's why, have you noticed that the West might impose sanctions on people they don't like? Iran, they don't like Iran, sanctions. North Korea, they don't like it, sanctions. Russia, because it invaded Ukraine, sanctions. But why no sanctions against, Mohammed bin Salman after he killed Jamal Khashoggi, a Turkish citizen actually, in Turkey, on Turkish soil, brought him into an embassy and killed him and cut his body into pieces. Yeah, it caused issues. It caused diplomatic argument, because he was an American citizen. Sorry. Why didn't they put sanctions on Saudi Arabia? Why didn't they put sanctions on any of the dictatorships in the Muslim world? Why for years, decades, they had been good friends of them, been supporting them? Why? But these are dictatorships. They don't believe in the human rights you get currently in the West, inside the West. Why? Because according to liberalism, they're doing what is necessary to bring about a liberal future, so you just let it happen. So that's why you let them be harsh, because they have to be harsh until Muslims no longer want Islam, and then you can have that liberal utopia, quote unquote, afterwards. And of course, the communists did the same thing. Communists could starve millions of people, massacre loads of people, send people to gulags, like prison camps, to do slave labor work. It was all to protect the revolution, the communist revolution, communist ideals, because as a materialistic ideology, it was all necessary for the future good, right? And that is one of the main problems of secularism and liberalism, is it's because they don't believe in an akhirah, it's because they want to create a heaven on earth, they end up causing a hell on earth in various ways. Because humans are not perfect, right? What does the Quran say about mankind? That Allah would make this matter light for you, because people were created weak. Islam understands that humans are weak. It doesn't expect you to be perfect. Islam has rahmah, right? So this is why Islam doesn't create utopias. An Islamic state is not a utopia. It's not meant to be. You can't make a utopia. Utopia means a perfect state, a perfect society. Doesn't exist. How do we know about the punishments, the had punishments, the hudud? How do we know about this in the Sunnah? I mean, yeah, there's ayah of Quran, but how do we know about this in the Sunnah? We know because there's a hadith where these were being applied in Medina during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think there's an echo thing come back. Right. Jazakallah. So that means that there were people of the Sahaba, the people of the generation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that was breaking the law. We know one Sahaba that was drunk a lot. He used to be punished a lot, constantly. He's drunk. But the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never said that people should hate him. Right? Yeah, he's punished, of course, but even in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the generation of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people were still breaking the law. So if that can happen in his presence, I mean not literally his presence, but in his time, where in the same city as him, it can happen anywhere. It's not about making people perfect. And that is why Islam is more humane. And by humane, I mean it agrees with the fitrah of the human being. I don't mean humane it fits liberal definitions. No. I mean, it agrees with human nature. So, 2010, I did lectures at a number of UK universities. I was invited to do lectures on the Sharia versus liberalism or secularism or what have you. And I made my lectures designed for non-Muslim audiences. And it's like, could I convince a non-Muslim who doesn't believe in Islam that the Sharia makes more sense for human nature? And that's how I design. I mean, these lectures are up. You can see them online if you Google them. Say, the Sharia and liberalism, or my name and Sharia, and you'll see these lectures I do. Non-Muslims are attending in the audience. I had in one of my second ever lecture on this topic, there was a Christian in the audience. He was the president of the Christian Student Society of the University of Loughborough, if I remember correctly. And in the Q&A, he said, I have a question. I'm a Christian. Can I live under the Sharia? Can I, help implement it? I was like, well, if you want to, I mean, sure, we're not going to say no. But we don't expect you to stop eating pork. If you don't want to eat pork, great. And if you want to follow the rest of Islamic laws, sure, be our guest. But we don't expect you to. But he saw the justice. He said that a lot of the Sharia that Islam believes in helps achieve Christian values that he saw. It agrees with Christian values and gives a practical solution to achieve Christian values. Because Christians today are secular Christians or liberal Christians. Most Christians are, like 99.99%. Even no matter how much they say they hate liberals, they themselves are liberal, right? And so there's a reason why they say they're not liberal, and there's a confusion. Liberal in the West means something else. Everyone's a liberal with a small L, like this, but not everyone is a liberal with a capital L, right? It's confusing, the labels, right? So they'll say they're conservatives, right? So Christian conservatives. Conservatives are liberals, by the way. They just have an ikhtilaf with liberals on policies. For example, a conservative would say the state should conserve some of the culture of the West, the cultural values, like marriage. It should encourage it. It should encourage different gender marriage between the opposite sex, because that's the traditional marriage, right? It's very good for stability, but not ban gay marriage, but just encourage traditional marriage. So the state is not neutral. It doesn't force you, but it's not neutral. It advertises for traditional marriage. But that would be a conservative Christian. They're still liberal, though. So Christians are taught in the Bible, we want to create a society filled with love. We love each other. We're told, American Christians, mostly Catholics, don't usually describe their Christianity like that. But this is more like the American version of it, right? So they emphasize love. It's all about love, yeah? So love each other. We don't want to see fornication, zina. We don't want to see adultery either. We don't like these things. We don't want to see theft. We don't want to see poverty. We don't want to see those things either. Okay, great. So what is your manhaj, right? What is your method of of making a society that achieves these things that you want to see there and that you don't want to see there? Okay. Well, we should just preach and tell people not to do it, right? It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Whereas that Christian in the lecture that I was giving on the Sharia, he was amazed because Islam has a number of solutions to these things. So I'm going to go into it now and give a brief talk about the solutions. I already told you about how Islam deals with minorities. Oh, by the way, when Muslims first took over land and they were filled with Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians and Hindi mushriks. I don't use the word Hindu because Hindu is the British name for, it's not a religion. It's just mushriks are mushriks. They have, Al-Hind had many religions, it's not one. Anyway, when we took over these lands, we were the minority, right? They actually were the majority, everyone forgets that. And yet there was no uprising by them because they saw the justice of Islam. When Muslims came to Al-Andalus, right, Hispania as the Romans called it, or Spain and Portugal, these two countries today, that area, the Muslims came, and I've read a lot into the local history there. So the King Theodoric of the Visigoths was killed in battle fighting the Muslims. He died, Muslims took over. In each different area, there was like lords, like Christian lords, and they had farmers in their land or whatever you. Muslims changed nothing of this structure. It's Christians, we don't interfere in your deen. Just you pay the jizya, which is for protection. So, because we have to fund the soldiers, the jund, the soldiers at the boundaries, it costs money. So we need just money for that protection. And that's it, live your life. A portion of the crops that are produced for the poor people and to fund the different things, which goes to Christian poor people as well. Everyone forgets. The Jews in Spain and Portugal loved the Muslims coming there because the Jews were persecuted by the Christians. When the Muslims came, that stopped. So actually, Spanish Jews and Portuguese Jews, there are some today, but they have a great history of thinking about Muslims when Muslims were there because they were not persecuted anymore by the Christians. So I've already told you this. Let's look at other things. Does Islam want to stop everyone from committing zina in their homes, from drinking alcohol in their homes? Well, yes. But can an Islamic State stop it or even try to stop it? No. The implementation of the Sharia doesn't apply inside your house by the authorities. By you as a Muslim, yes. Because Sharia is everything. It's how you, it's smiling at people is the Sharia. That's implementing it. You implement it alone. The state doesn't get involved in your house, unless you kill someone, but that's something else, right? But if you drink in your own house, if you commit zina in your own house, all this stuff, the state cannot get involved. We know this from an athar by Caliph Umar, radiallahu anhum. Right? He's walking by one day, hears some noise from someone's house, something like sound like music or something. He peers over the wall. He sees someone is drinking alcohol, and he's with a woman who's an indecent woman, shall we say, right? Not a family member. Let's just put it like that. So he says, like, in essence, like, "Ayab alayk," like, shame on you, what you're doing. Yeah, bisharam also was the order word, like, you know, this is shame. And like, you're going to get punished for this. And the man says, no, shame on you for breaking my privacy. And so in essence, Umar radiallahu anhu said, kind of to paraphrase, in essence, okay, I'll drop it if you drop it. Right? Like, yeah. Because he was outside the bounds by breaking that person's privacy. So if the Sharia doesn't go in people's homes to force them to not drink alcohol and stop zina, then why is it prohibited in the Quran? Is it just for individuals to do? And the state doesn't get involved in this? No, the state does get involved, but the state protects a key space in the society, the public space. Okay. No one is allowed to come in and change the culture and make it normal to do zina. Or in the West now, it's expected to do zina. If you are a young man, 20 years old, you haven't had sex, they say, the culture is something wrong with you? Something strange with you? You haven't had sex? And with women too. So much so that among many girls, some as young as 13 or even 11, even in many cases, which is under the UK's consent laws, right? Just to show you the strange irony of it. They say, they plan, well, find a nice boy to lose your virginity to. Not someone you're going to marry, not someone who'll be your boyfriend, just so you can say you've lost your virginity to. It's become pressure. There's a social pressure to commit sins in the West. There's a social pressure to take out bank loans. You want to have a house? You don't want to rent your apartment anymore? You want to have the freedom to know that the house you live in is yours? You need riba. No riba, no independence. No interest banking or interest-based system. No loans. If you want to be known as a real man, you have to have loads of girlfriends. Otherwise, you're not a real man. This is the social culture in the West, so much so that just being a good Muslim in the West, you feel this pressure. Muslim women in the West feel a constant pressure to take off their hijab. Right? I don't judge Muslim women in the West, and by judge I mean I don't look down on them by saying you are a bad person because you took off hijab. I say you're committing a sin, yes, but I know there's a pressure on you. Maybe if I was in your situation, I was a woman in our situation, I would have caved in for even earlier than you did. As Muslims, we're not allowed to look down on each other. That's the point. But they're under a lot of pressure. Take off your hijab. Why? In the West, woman is valued by the beauty. Now, sure, under the law doesn't say anything about this, yes. But in the West, anyone will tell you that if they wear loose clothing and they don't put makeup and so on, they notice that men treat them differently. They don't open doors for them. They don't get job interviews as much, or they're not as successful in job interviews. People don't make excuses for them at work if they make a mistake. They get a lot of privileges if they show their beauty, if you use your beauty. Right? The advertisements in the West is, if you got it, flaunt it. So if you have some advantage, some beauty, some attraction, use it. If you don't, you are at a disadvantage compared to everyone else. It's like also applying for a job as well in the West. You have to lie on your CV, they say, on your resume, as Americans say, or your CV, your curriculum vitae. I don't know what word you use in Pakistan. Curriculum CV? Same? Okay. Why? Because everyone else is lying. So if you are truthful, your CV doesn't look as good. And then you're at disadvantage. And then you will not get a job. And so what is Islam, what is the Sharia aiming to do now? What's it aiming to do? And funnily enough, it was me asking this question that actually made me led me to becoming Muslim at 14. I asked the question, why does Islam want women to wear hijab for? Why? What's the point of it? I was young, and there was a TV program, American comedy, kind of a comedy program called Ally McBeal. Maybe people from the UK might know what I'm talking about, right? You know this, right? It was about a woman who's a lawyer, and in her workplace. And her workplace is filled full of sexual politics. Yeah? But this is normal. It wasn't like a workplace that was different from normal workplaces. But the comedy was more like how she reacts to it or how people express it. But there's sexual politics, sexual tension in the office is a normal thing in Western workplaces. Normal. And she was juggling I want to be a career woman and I don't want to have children, but at the same time, I feel something empty in myself. Like I want to have children, but if I have a child, I can't be successful in my career, you know. And then she's getting older and older, and as you get older, past 30 years old, it starts to become more dangerous to have children and so on, you know. Especially if you never had children before, it gets dangerous even more so. If you've had children before, then the body kind of like remembers, you know. But anyway, it's quite fascinating. I'm not going to talk about biology, but the workplace was so filled with sexual tension and politics. I was watching this, like, does anyone actually do work right in the office? Yeah. And when I thought about the hijab, I thought, well, what is Islam trying to do with the hijab? And I would later learn it's not only the hijab. Men have to look down. You can't look at women, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of things. Not just the hijab, but there's a whole bunch of things there. The whole package. Okay. So I came to a realization at 14. It seems to me that Islam just wants to remove sexuality and sex, politics, and all this from society so people can actually do their jobs, have an education, go about their day without feeling sexual frustration all the time, or sexual tension or pressure. Well, that makes sense. Okay, that's actually quite... there's hikmah in this. I didn't use the word hikmah, but there's wisdom in it, right? And but this sounds like what I would expect from a deen that explains the purpose of life for humans. It explains how to live your life as well. You're not a part-time believer, are you? Your purpose of life to worship Allah is not part-time, is it? Because you're a full-time human, and if your purpose of life as a human is to na'bud, is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are a full-time worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore revelation should come for your whole life. So I've only discussed the social aspects. There's much more I can discuss. Problems of liberalism, the fact that they allow uncontrolled social pressures. They allow interest banking that causes concentration of wealth. Such that in the West currently, 50% of the people only own 1% of the wealth, and 1% of the population owns 50% of the wealth. Now, rich people, having rich people is not a problem. But if there's so much concentration of wealth, there's not enough to go around. Now, that is a problem. And sure, the West have a welfare system and, well, in England, free healthcare, America, not free healthcare. But they have free healthcare, but the problem is that costs money. And taxes simply is not enough to cover the needs of the people. So that, let's just say, if you have a serious illness and disease in the UK, you really don't want to go to the NHS, the National Health Service, right? If you're lucky, you'll get treatment in a couple months, 4 or 5 months, if you're lucky, right? It's breaking point now, because they were trying to mend a system that has a fundamental break in it, and they can't mend it, right? So I can discuss Islamic economics, because the Sharia isn't just about hudud, punishment for theft. It isn't just about it isn't just about no interest, no riba. There's a lot discussion about who owns the energy, how to use energy sources, water, now oil and electricity, but before it would be wood and fire and things like this. There's very detailed system. The punishment for theft, like even the cutting of the hands, amputation of the hand for theft, right? The had in the Quran for theft. Again, it's misunderstood. Yes, it's a punishment for theft, but you don't punish every single poor person that steals. If someone steals food because they're hungry, you can't punish them in Islam. The had is not, you can't apply it on a poor person who steals because they're hungry. In fact, the criteria is like more than 1/4 of a gold coin, I think, of the value of what they steal. It has to be from a secure place. There's a whole bunch of restrictions, but basically only career criminals, people who steal for luxury, are punished with the hand amputation. And the hikmah, and I'll leave you on this point, just to give you a taste of the Sharia, because it's a big subject in itself. What do you steal with? What do you steal with? You steal with your hands. So in an Islamic system where the state is providing for the poor people, where you don't have to steal because you're hungry or you don't have a place to live. If you do, it's a shame on the state, not on you, for not providing. So in such a state where it's not about materialism anymore, it's not about, you're not cool because you have a nice car or you have a big house. You're cool if you do your sunnah prayers, you're cool if you smile at all your fellow Muslim brothers, you greet them, you're cool if you're trustworthy, that's cool. Right? So in such a state where the culture is not materialist, you can have nice things, no problem, have it, but your social worth is not measured on that. Yeah. In such a state where you're provided for, it's not about materialist objects. If you steal in that system, it's because there's something wrong with you. And if you're insane, you're not punished anyway. So if you're sane and you still steal in that situation, there's something wrong with you. So we're going to protect people's right to property from you by making it harder. We're actually going to help you. We're going to make it harder for you to steal, right? We're going to make it harder. You might say, send them to jail for a couple of years. Guess what? In the West, the reoffending rates, where a person goes to jail, they come out, the likelihood of reoffending, making a new crime again, is about 60-70%. And they also found that the people that cause the most crime, the source of the majority of the crime, is about 3 to 4% of the population are responsible for the most crime. It's a tiny minority of people who are career criminals. So you deal with them, make it hard for them to steal, give them extra aid, rehabilitate them after they've been punished. Jail, send them back, they come back out. Revolving door? You know revolving door? They go in, they come out, they do the same thing again. It's even worse when you have a criminal record, because you have to apply for a job. You've got a criminal record. They say, well, we don't want you as a criminal. So now you're forced to steal. You're forced to go back into criminality because you can't get a job anymore, because once you've made one mistake, that's it, your life is over. That's the West. In Islam, we have rahmah, right? Oh, and by the way, and I'll end it with this last point, as my friend Sami Hamdi also says, one more last point. An Islamic state is the only state in existence where you can be forgiven for your crimes, except for the presidential pardon. So now some madhahib say if you steal, someone can forgive you. The person you stole against can forgive you. Others say you don't. You have to punish them. As soon as you go to the state and say this person has stolen, they must be punished. But if you commit the crime of murder, right, you kill someone in the Islamic State, the state can't forgive you, right? The president, like President Trump, when he recently forgave people who stormed the Capitol, right? He forgave them, of course. The state can't forgive you. The only person that can forgive you is the family of the victim. And Islam encourages them to forgive. If you want Allah's forgiveness, you should forgive people. Right? You can be forgiven. The murderer can say, look, please, I beg you, please forgive me. I was angry, I didn't know what was happening, whatever. You actually can be forgiven if they choose to forgive you. If not, then justice must be done. But the Islamic system is a system of rahmah and hikmah, mercy and justice. Anyway, I've spoken a lot. I've missed tons of stuff out. Like the economic system of Islam, I can do a lecture just on that. I can do 3 or 4 lectures just on that. And I have done as well. So I'm gonna, if you want to ask a question about that, it's in the Q&A, but barakallahu feekum for listening and your patience. And inshallah, please go ahead, ask a question. If you have a contention, you disagree with anything, or you want to challenge me, please do so. I hope you do. And in fact, I'll ask for those people first. I'll give you privilege. If anything I've said that you disagree with, you think I was not clear on, or you want clarification, or you want even evidence, please go first. Okay, brother in the back.
So you have mentioned the terminology Islamic State multiple times. That has been mentioned here. So I think that, not on my own thinking, but I would actually quote minority and an Islamic intellectual, that is Professor Wael Hala, a Palestinian Christian, and ironically, that's why I would say, bringing the problematic thing in this Islamic state. That it also includes your perspective that you said. I would say that any person, or rather maybe a Muslim or a non-Muslim, if they have the right understanding of Islam, they will consider that system for them to progress. So why Halak argues in his book, The Impossible State, he says that a word like Islamic state is contradictory, because the state, the concept of state itself, it's a Western, the statehood is basically a Western concept, and state is basically fundamentally secular, and it's Western, and it can't be actually confined with the concept of Islam. So why we use the term like Islamic state, eventually we would like to establish an Islamic state where we will be mimicking the Western concept of state and undermining the values of Islam itself. So yeah, the concept of because we have you just mentioned that we are here to change the mindsets, and the terminologies and these words play a huge role in shaping those that mindset. So this is what I wanted to draw, that terminology Islamic state is basically it's contradictory terminology, and they can't be spoken in the context. And the concept of like Islamic state of Pakistan and Iran or something, the concept is preposterous. So this is.
Okay, so Wael Halaq, he had a book called The Impossible State. He's a Christian Arab thinker, and although he seems to, some people have said he has some positive things to say about Islam, he said that the idea of an Islamic state is impossible because the modern state system, or the state system itself, concept of state, is a Western concept, and an Islamic system would not fit a state. There's a little problem with that. Is that the adhan for Isha? Okay. No, oh no, it's okay. I couldn't. Obviously, we can't speak when the adhan is going on, of course. Okay. I would say the devil is in the definition. The devil's in the details, this phrase. I say the devil's in definition. We need first to define our terms. A state is an English word, yes, of course. comes from état, a French word, and so on and so forth. But the term state is not really the issue here. Because what Al-Halaq was saying is, in essence, I suppose he means a nation state. So a state defined, a modern state, which he argues is one that encompasses the education system, responsible for education, an Islamic state in the past didn't necessarily have a state curriculum or mandated curriculum, but it did fund madaris, it did fund actually a basic level of education for the poor people that couldn't afford it. So it would say, managing resources, managing the economic system, managing the currency, these kinds of things, you say, is a modern invention. I would say that it's not a contradiction at all. A state is, the definition of it, as they call it, is a political community. So it's a group of people, community, who live and interact with each other, and they have a mechanism of managing their affairs. Once that's the case, that's the definition of state. That's what state is, by definition, the original definition of that. So the Islamic concept of state is simply Jama' wa imam, right? So the Muslims have united and congregated together in a group, a Jama', not to be confused with a political party. That can also, the word Jama' is used for many things. It could be used for the Jummah prayers. You come into Jama', you pray as a group in the Jama'. But the state of the Muslims, the Medina, right, of the Muslims is where the Jama'ah is. The Muslims have come together, united under one Imam, and the law system is implemented, the Had and the Sharia and so on and so forth. Now that's a state, all right? All right, Isha prayer. Okay, I'll kind of, should we kind of wrap it up in 2-3 minutes, let people pray Isha, or you want to? Really? Okay. So yeah, a state is something which is just simply a community that controls its own affairs. Is a state.
Definition you have given of state, I believe that fits with the definition of society, because in state, the power, the sovereignty belongs to the rulers and the ruling party of the state. However, because in contrary to the Islamic point of view, in context of Islamic ruling system, the sovereignty lies towards Allah alone. So the communal and the people who say that could define the definition of society, but I would say that state requires aspects to be qualified as a state, to be called as a state. And you said that we need to redefine our own definition. So I asked you that there's a local, I would say, I wouldn't call him an intellectual, but he uses a term like Islamic secularism. So now can we define like something like Islamic secularism? We can't actually redefine, because the words, they carry their own...
It's a contradiction, yes. I fully agree we shouldn't use things like Islamic feminism, Islamic secularism, Islamic democracy. These are oxymorons, as in they are contradictions. But because coming from a study of political philosophy and history, the use of the word state in the English language has been applied to a number of different political systems, and the most common, or the common denominator definition is an organized community that is in control of its affairs. That's it. That's the minimal definition of state. So while Al-Halaq was adding things to his version of what he thinks a state means, and so from the perspective of political philosophy, I would simply say that's not the only definition of what a state is, right? So a state is simply like the city-states of the Greeks, the Medina, that term itself can mean state as well, because the name of the town was Yathrib. That's its name. It was changed simply to Al-Medina, the state. That's it, right? So the word state doesn't mean a modern day secular, democratic or a republican state, it doesn't mean that a state is a generic English word that is used for many radically different political systems and ideas. And so I use it in that sense, that historians have used it, that many political philosophers have used it. An Islamic state is a state where the community of people control their own affairs. Affairs being the definition of politics. Is in our affairs is the affair. Amro is our politics, how the laws are, what the laws are, who implements them, who enforces the laws. These things all are define what a political state is or political community is.
But I have been saying that I have said that we end up making the very concept of state, the modern state, so that has been actually been established. I mean, I'm not talking about something which would be applied in the future, because you see currently we have the same bureaucratic system as of any Western country, you see. That is what the concern which was mentioned in the book, and that we have seen and has been implemented in different cases as well. Because eventually you become subservient to one another. And you said that, actually, in literary terms, state could be defined as
historians have used it. They call it the Greek city-states. This was before secularism. This is before the modern institutions, or state-based institutions like the schooling system or all these kinds of things.
Yeah, but those were the things in the past, because when we discuss in terms of state, it's like we don't have to the predefined, in subconscious mind, it comes like the concept of modern state. And you see that in contemporary Muslim countries, there is this inferior psychology where we try to somehow shape Islam to please the West. And that is what happens when we do like Islamic state, and where we just make the some laws of Islam and apply the same bureaucracy.
I totally agree. No, I totally agree. We borrow words from the West. I have an article I wrote called "False Coins," if you see it, where I condemn Muslims that use the word Islamic secularism, Islamic democracy, Islamic feminism. And I make a joke about it. So why not Islamic Satanism? Because Satanism, you could say Satanism just means you believe that Satan exists, right? So if you believe Satan exists, then you're a Satanist, right? Yeah. So why not use that? People say, well, no, because it has connotations. And I totally understand where what halak comes from. But if you're speaking in the English language, the word state is a very broad term that can apply to a number of different things, not his particular definitions that he's adopted. But you don't need to speak English. You can use Arabic terms, sultaniya if you'd like, right? Imara if you'd like, or imama, or khilafa to be more precise. Use those terms, right? But I'm speaking English to you, so I'm translating the best I can what sultaniya would mean. Sultaniya would be governance, I suppose. So governance is a very broad term. Or authority, governing authority, but that refers to the very specific group amongst the Muslim Jama'ah that implements the dawla, the regime is another Arabic word used. That's not necessarily an Islamic word, but that was a later Arabic word used. The regime, the group of the ruling group, right? But the Muslims are more than just a ruling group amongst us. It's the Jama'ah plus ruling group. So collectively, we can call this khilafa, imama, what have you, if you like. But in English, there is no nearest approximate translation to what is a jama'ah plus the ruling group. What's the name for the whole thing together? It's called a state, right? There's no other English word. If you have a better English word, I will use it. Tell me. But because I'm speaking English, I have to find the nearest approximate translation for Islamic or Arabic concepts. And that's all I can find. As I said, Medina is another word used for state. Just to give you a point, the Zionists, they resurrected the Hebrew language, which, by the way, they had forgotten for 1,800 years. They never used it, but they resurrected it to say, we are natives, and they took the Hebrew languages from the Semitic languages of the Middle East. Okay. What they call the state of Israel, they call it Medina Israel. Yeah, Medina, the state of Israel. So they use the word Medina because in the Hebrew language, the word for a state is a Medina. So maybe we can use that in Arabic language, but in English, what do I use? There's no other term. I can use a Greek word, politeia, if you'd like. That's a Greek word, but I'm speaking English, so I'm open to new English words. But we can only translate as best we can, I think, when speaking different languages. So a state is still a broad term, and it means that. And I'll give you a great hadith for this. So Hudayfa bin Yaman was asking the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ about the future, right? And he says that there'll be time of good, after time of good would be time of bad, and he asked, and then after that would be time of good, and then he asked what would be after that, and then there's different versions. The majority version of this narration will be that says that there will be people who will be calling to the gates of hellfire, right? There'll be those who will be callers to the gates of hellfire, and what another version is that there will be leaders who will have the hearts of shayateen and so on and so forth, right? The hearts of shaitan or so, to give I think the version. Anyway, so then Hudayfa asks the Rasulullah, what do you command us to do at this time? So he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stick to the jama'ah and their imam, right? And then Hudayfa says, what if there is no jama'ah or imam, right? And then he was told, then stay away from all the firaq, all the factions, even if you have to eat the roots of a tree, right? So this is a great narration because it talks about that to save yourself, to protect Muslims, to protect ourselves, we rally into a state, behind our state. And the state is a jama'ah and imam, right? The Muslims have come together and the imam above them. Different from the Bedouin, who are not, they are Muslim, they might be Muslim Bedouin, but they haven't come to the jama'ah, they haven't joined the group, the central group. And when Sultan Suleiman, the Khalifa, the first Khalifa of the Ottomans, maybe people say his father was, but he had his wazir issue a fatwa. There was a fatwa that was issued because he was a Turkish person, he wasn't Arab. And he was telling the Muslims, look, there's no Arab candidate now. The last Abbasid Caliph died. We need a new Imam. So you should give bay'at to him as the new Khalif of the Muslims. So this fatwa was published, and the fatwa was amazing. It quotes the hadith of Hudayfa bin Yaman and says that Sultan Suleiman, he is the Imam behind which the Muslims, the Jama'ah, congregates and protects themselves from the callers to Jahannam and from the oppressors and so on. This is the people, so that's why you must come to him and you must rally around him, and the Jama'ah goes around him on this. So this is where the concept comes from, I think, in political fiqh of the Muslims, which is of the classical scholars, which is a state is, in essence, the Jama'ah. The Muslims have congregated in an area, not the Bedouins who are nomads. They've come together in a central area, or they in a community, and they have an imam over them. And this is what Islamic State means as a basic minimum. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Word is more confusion in the Muslim world, or difference of opinion, or argumentation. Throw the word state out the window. Don't care. It's just a word. As long as what the Sharia has mandated for Muslims, we establish it. Call it what you want, right? But it is use Arabic words, imama and khilaf, inshallah.
So the first figure that we had over there was basically talking about the situation in Gaza, and it's evident to say that.
Is that on?
We tend to practice religion only inside our masjid, even in Pakistan as well. So it's pretty secular over here. So I think this question seems to be better asked from you because you already know about how Islamic Sharia works as well as how liberalism or secular works in the Western countries. We can make that radical change and shift from our secular society to a more Islamic society. What would be the practical steps for that?
Realize an Islamic sultaniya. Right? I'll use that term now. There you go. All right. So, first and foremost, just to understand that the world project of Islam is simply this: that as Muslims, the aim is first to unite the Ummah. Like Salahuddin Ayyubi, he wanted to unite the Ummah. He wasn't the Khalif, but he gave bay'ah to the Abbasid Khalif, and the Abbasid Khalif supported him with donations and urged people to donate to his cause, gave him official bay'ah, tasjil, made him an official governor of the Khalifa. So Salahuddin fought under the banner of the Khilafah. Anyway, and he fought to unite the Muslims. So the first thing is this: establish an Islamic wilaya or sultaniya here in Pakistan, and then unite with every other Islamic wilaya you can, or help to change them into Islamic wula, and then you can, once we have a central mass, you could say, then we can appoint a Khalifa, right, in essence. Or if there's enough strength, appoint a Khalifa sooner rather than later. But the Ottomans waited till they conquered Egypt before they declared, they said, okay, now we are the Khalifa of the Muslims. So they had to control the central parts, or the more strategic parts, to say, now we are the Jama'ah. So now our Imam is the Imam of the Muslims. Okay, so and then from that, the Khilafah will be the vehicle of Islam to the world. And it doesn't mean war or attacking or what have you. It can simply mean, like I said, Malaysia and Indonesia became Muslim just from interaction with Muslim trade, because they saw our economic system is just. There was no armies that went there to conquer the Malaysians or Indonesians, right? Okay, so the public dawah to the world will go. So that's the long term. What about now getting to that initial step? Yeah. So how do we change the state of Pakistan and every other Muslim country? And I think you, the youth, are pivotal in this. Firstly, I want you guys first, as individuals first, I want you to look at all the du'at that you watch on YouTube, the du'at that you are impressed by, all the very capable, very impressive, and very strong du'at. And also, by the way, don't forget about me at some point, after that group. All right. No, but I want you to look at all these people and say, I can do better. I want you to make it your aim to be better than us, improve. Say, I can do what that guy does, and I can do it better than he can. Aim high, right? And in fact, if the next generation is not better than the previous one, we failed, right? So that's why you guys have to start believing in yourselves, and don't think, oh, but I'm not from UK, I don't have a British accent, what can I do, right? No, I've seen people in the UK that are not very intellectual, right? So obviously, get rid of that colonialist mindset where you say just because they're from the UK, they must know better. They don't. And you guys try to be the changers that you looked up to. You be the next generation, be the better than the previous one. That's what I want you guys as your personal homework, you could say, right? I want you to master this. I want you to study everything you possibly can, every subject you possibly can. Have knowledge at least about everything, even if it's superficial, but know it, right? Improve yourselves as a Muslim. I know it's a very commonly often repeated phrase, be the change you want to see, but it kind of has some wisdom to it, right? Now, that is just a starting point for you as an individual. It's not a prerequisite. You don't have to say, I must be perfect first before I change. No, your journey to perfection is lifelong. Even after Khilafah is re-established, and inshallah if you're there to see it, which inshallah hopefully you can be, why not? You'll still be trying to perfect yourself. But rather I want you first to say, I need also to change myself. the great thing I love about Urdu language. In England, when people say, either I perfect myself, or I change society or I campaign. In Urdu, I love it. Ur means and. So I must perfect myself and change society at the same time. Or, right? That's it, right? So why not do both at the same time? Because you're not a part-time kind of socializer, right? You're in society. You can't say, I will just stay away from society. No, you need to do simultaneous everything, hit everything at the same time. Yeah, because you do that anyway. You're in society, you're in your private life, you live these lives. So that's what I want you to do on an individual level. Not first, just add that to one of the things you must do, not as a prerequisite, but just do it alongside the bigger work. Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, even if you know one ayah of Quran, spread it. So this is the permission from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and not permission, a command, that even if you have a little bit of knowledge, spread it. But just make sure you just don't speak outside your knowledge. That's all. You can still give da'wah, but if someone asks you a question you can't answer, just say, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to find out. There's no shame on you. Right? As Imam Malik said, I know guys are Hanafi, but Imam Malik said, half of wisdom is saying I don't know. Right? No shame in saying I don't know. I've said it many times. I don't know. It's a good question. And because of that, I went to find out. So, get straight involved in developing yourself alongside the other thing you're going to do, which is the aim to change society. Now, this is done by a number of ways. One of those ways is, firstly, you must be public about Islam and the Sharia, why it is a better solution for Pakistan. You must first understand what the problem is. Why is not Pakistan an Islamic Sultaniya, right? What does an Islamic Sultaniya look like as well? Now, I would also say that if you're going to call to change Islamic change in society, you must know what the alternative looks like. A lot of my lectures are describing what the alternative actually looks like. Go study it, right? What does an Islamic policy look like, right? And then if anyone in your interactions fails to live up to the Islamic expectations, simply tell them, like, well, I've made a contract with you. Why is this contract not binding? And someone told me that about a place where I'm staying, that you can buy those places, but you might not get possession of them. I'm like, what? But if I sign a contract and I buy it, then I should get possession of it if I consider that. And they were telling me, this is Pakistan. A contract doesn't mean what you think it does. It's like, it should do, right? In Islam, a contract is a contract. Yeah. So I met another brother. He was a brother called Kashif, I know. He's also based in an area that I'm currently staying at just temporarily. And he came from England. I knew him from London, and he came here. And he wants to cause positive change in Pakistan. And he said that in England, maybe, he didn't say he did, but he said that in England, maybe people find a way not to pay tax or to avoid, like to pay a little bit. But here, he says we must make sure we pay 100% what we owe, what is required. Because if all Pakistanis did it, the state would have more money. It could then make improvements to infrastructure and so on. If everyone thinks, how can I pay the less tax possible? This brings down the state. Now, this is still not on the level of political campaigning. This is more on the level of social campaigning. But as I said, every arena must be ticked. Individual campaigning, changing yourself, improving yourself, developing yourself. Not just your namaz or your sunnah or your qiyam al-layl, but also your knowledge, right? Also yourself. So it's a comprehensive improvement, right? That's one. So that's individual. Social is in making sure that you have Islamic expectations and trying to be a good Islamic example in society. If you must have failures, keep them private, at the minimum, right? But don't corrupt society by simply doing what everyone else is doing. That's number 2. Number 3 is the political campaigning, right? And that you might need to go on the level of collective movement. Yeah. Sometimes a Jamaat, make a Jamaat if you want, join an existing Jamaat that is calling to it. It doesn't matter. Unity isn't that everyone is part of the same political Jamaat, because of the ikhtilaf and disagreements and so on. But I discovered that unity is something else, and Muslims in the UK, we learned this the hard way. Because the government, the British government is clamping down on Islamic practices, talking about political aspects of Islam, Sharia and so on and so forth. They call you extremist and they make life difficult for you. So the Muslims before, we were arguing, we were divided, we were, like there were Salafis, Brelvis, Deobandis, other types of Sufis, Ikhwanis, you name it, there was all kinds. And it was an all versus all civil war, all right? I mean, not violence, but or sometimes there might have been, but arguments, sometimes takfir, sometimes tadalla, saying you're a deviant. And, you know, I will do a bara' from you, bara' I will separate from you and separate, I won't pray behind this, I'm going to, all this stuff. And then we realized that we're in a burning house and we're having these arguments, and circumstances forced us to work together. And we learned something that we should have known already from what Islam tells us, which is this. We all want to see Islam implemented. We want to see Islam implemented fully. So it doesn't matter that you have a different interpretation of the Islamic Aqidah to myself, or different practices or so on. I won't cooperate you in what I disagree with, but I will cooperate in the good, in the khair, as the Quran tells us to. Cooperate in the good. I can work with someone I disagree with. Right? I might have arguments with. Maybe I have personal arguments with a disagreement, but I'm going to work with him in public for the common goal we all agree on. So if you have multiple Jamaat, no problem. As long as you have an understanding that if we're going to have a demonstration calling for the implementation of Sharia in Pakistan, let's all go to that same demonstration. Multiple Jamaat, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's the name is on the banner, or this Jamaat, this demonstration must be known. It's our Jamaat demonstration. No, let we all be part of that demonstration. All of us together, right? It doesn't matter. It's not about Jamaat. It's about the end goal, right? The Muslim world's Jahiliyyah is so much focused on the who, it forgets the what. We say, oh, you want a Khilafah? I've heard this. You want a Khilafah? Who's going to be the Khalif? Who is it? Yeah, because we're all going to argue about it. In the West, let's say if the West's system collapsed and they had to reestablish their system again, no one's going to say, oh, you want to make a republic with a president? Who's going to be the president? See, we don't care. We make a system, and then that system, we have a selection process that selects the president. We don't care about who it is, as long as the system's established. Now, even though this is what I call being enlightened, but with kufr, right? There's a kufr system, but they're enlightened with it. They have hikmah with their kufr, right? But we are jahil with our haqq, right? Yeah. So no, it must be my group that does it. It must be my group. I don't care who the Caliph is. I don't care what ethnic group he is. I don't care what madhab he is. I don't care what interpretation of Aqidah he follows. As long as he doesn't force everyone to follow his interpretation or his ikhtilaf, which is the sunnah of the majority of the khulafa, apart from 3 Mu'tazilite caliphs, is not to force people to change their interpretation of Aqidah. You don't get involved in that. The Caliph just implements the political laws. Okay? So if that's the case, then I don't care. I don't care if he's Baloch. I don't care if he's Pathan. I don't care if he's Sindhi. I don't care if he's Punjabi. I don't care. Right? Even Bengali. I don't care. Right? Right? It's all about the system. And so you need to do political work, which is campaigning, writing, back in the other days, we used to give leaflets out, sharing stuff, writing articles. Demonstrations are important. And public movement is important because, and here's an important thing, because everyone has to see people in public calling for a change and saying what that change is. It has to be seen publicly. There's a reason why. In your mind, it doesn't matter if everyone here agrees on the same ideas. If we haven't publicly seen each other implement it, we all will just follow what we think everyone expects us to follow, not realizing that we all agree, let's just say, right? It's called, we have a word for this, it's called society and social consciousness, all right? Why does I call it the social contract? You can't change the social contract, the social expectations, or culture, as people call it, yeah? You can't change it unless people see that in that society there's a movement for people saying, guys, we need to change what we were doing from before. This is wrong, and we need to do this instead, right? Can we all agree that we're going to do this new thing now? Once everyone sees that, it becomes a new culture, right? So that might require political movements. Jamaat, the reason why you need a Jamaat is simply because Jamaats tend to coordinate political activities, demonstrations, public events. You can't do it as one guy, right? So individual change, social change, working for political change, and do all that simultaneously. Okay, don't say I must perfect myself. I was like, no. I think it was a classical scholar. I don't know if it's Hassan al-Basri or someone who said, when someone said, I'll perfect myself before I call to Islam or I do da'wah, and he said, this is what Shaitan wants you to think, because he knows that you'll never get to the stage of doing da'wah, because you'll never be perfect. Okay, so I've given you, in essence, the political theory of social change, I suppose, but I know I can go into more detail, but I'll leave it like that. Individual, social, so in your interactions, your mu'amalat, and on the political level, you need to implement those changes and do it from day one, all three. Like begin the process at least.
So we have to do more questions.
Sure.
My question stems from the first question that was asked on the stories right now. We talked about the comparison between Islam, Sharia system and other system. And I mean, that whenever I take something from West, I make a patch in it. I apply my Islamization toolkit on it. You would say that I am inferior, I am inferiority complex.
Okay, that's a good question. So I discussed this yesterday at an event I did, and I'll give you the end result answer, I suppose, a formula you can use to guide you on this. There are two things that we look at when we look at reality, we look at our life and anything. We look at what we should and shouldn't do, and we study what is and is not. What exists, what doesn't exist, or what could exist. So potential, like I can make a new jet fighter that could exist. I can make new agricultural methods. What exists? The solar system, the galaxies, planets, mountains, tectonic plates. What doesn't exist? Fairies, Santa Claus, Donald Trump's conscience, maybe. So this is the arena of knowledge where we look at what exists, what doesn't exist, and what could exist. We can take that from anyone with proof. So if someone says, "Oh, guys, I discovered a planet, an exoplanet in another solar system somewhere," and look, I say, "Right, great, show me the proof on your telescopes and whatever." No problem, I can take that. You've added to my knowledge of the universe, of Allah's universe. Great, I can take that. Oh, I've managed to. Someone says, this is the number of pi to 1 million decimal points. Sure, past decimal point. Sure, no problem. Yeah. But then someone says, okay, now here's what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So if you have a company, you have a people who are in a partnership, you should consider them to be one legal person. Say, oh, wait, what? Why should I? Okay, so if the West tells you something that what you should and shouldn't, you say, no, I don't take your description of what I should and I should not do, what I'm obliged to do, what I'm not obliged to do. I take that from the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so it's called, in Western philosophy, the category term is ethics, or morals and ethics. It's the study of should, shouldn't, obliged, not obliged, prohibited. Whereas in the other areas of knowledge is what exists, what doesn't exist, how it works, what could that is physics, chemistry, maths, what have you. What could exist is engineering, art, creativity, what have you. We could take that from anyone in terms of because these are studies of reality. as long as we take the proof with it. Someone says, oh, well, then you must believe in the multiverse. No, because there's no proof in the multiverse. It's just speculation that you've invented, usually by atheists, to explain why the universe is one particular way and not a different particular way. So they say, instead of saying, well, the only explanation we can find is God, or we don't like that, okay, let's just say there's there's infinite other variations of universe where every other variation is tried, right? That makes more sense. Instead of believing in one God, we'll believe in an infinite number of universes, and yet not explain where they come from individually. Okay, oh wait, fine, so universe X1 to Z. Why did that universe come out as X1 to Z and not X1 to B or something like that? Anyway, these are my debates of atheists. Okay, so it's simple, that's it. Ethics or morals, and law is a subset of that. Economic policy is a subset of that category. We don't take from anyone except Quran and Sunnah. How to do accounting properly, make it efficient accounting, yeah, we could take from anyone. Like Umar Radhanhum took the Diwan system of accounting from the Persians. Because it's about simply, well, Islam says we need to have accounting in the Bayt al-Mal and so, okay, and we have to do it efficiently and manage it. Okay, well, the Persians have a method of efficiently achieving that. Because it's a factual reality that it's efficient. So, okay, we take. So that's in a simple nutshell, a simple formula to guide us. Shouldn't, only Quran or Sunnah. What is not knowledge, or what could be, we take from anyone with the proof. Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that hikmah is the lost property of the believer. Hikmah is judgment, and so knowing how to be efficient, knowing how to achieve something correctly. This is in the branch of hikmah. You can get that from anybody. Right? It belongs to us in a way. We're more deserving of it, as the hadith says. The Muslim is actually more deserving of it. So we take from anyone, hikmah from anyone.
So what do you say about these institutions, social institutes, medical institutes?
Yeah.
And because these institutes are not based on is statements, they are based on is statements and ought to statements. I mean, there are two aspects in these systems, social systems. They are ethical systems, but definitely to run these systems, we need a method. This method is known through experience. Definitely, Quran has not told me how to do accounting. That's you mentioned. So the question comes to these physics, chemistry, biology. There is no big issue there. The big issue appears where the ethics is involved. And ethics is involved in the societal system and in the political system, in the legal system. Is it possible that we take a system, for example, in Pakistan, we have our legal system, which is actually a colonial system.
Yeah.
But definitely we have institute.
The initial basis was shared with India, because both India and Pakistan were created from the same British legal code, ironically.
We have institute actually, we just Islamized it and it learned all the laws in detail, and they finally gave verdict that what are the aspects which we can retain and what are the aspects which we need to change. So I mean, is it necessary every time that we just scrap everything from scratch, everything, and just start from scratch and from fresh in these matters which are pertinent to ethics?
Should we start from scratch in the legal system? Short answer, yes. Why not? Okay. From scratch. I mean, there's a lot of things that are shared with the West which everyone would understand and recognize. Like a contract. Well, a contract, we know what a contract is. A contract, the West has contracts, we have contracts, but we have prohibited contracts, things we can't contract to buy and sell, like haram objects, or have clauses that allow riba, or trade of the same resource, but you give me back extra of that resource back, which is riba. That's riba. It's a very basic definition of it. So we can, why not from the ground up? Because what I realized in the Muslim world is this. The Muslim world, these laws were introduced to us, and the scholars that remained, or the scholars that were listened to or officially appointed by the rulers, just made istihlal. This is halal, this is halal, this is halal. Stamp, rubber stamp, right? That was their only job. Lord Cromer also said that the Muslim scholar would be useful for the new system, the new political system, as in just to say this is halal and you should follow it. So I take example from the Iranian system, where you say the Iranian system has no, I mean, like the world, the West is against them. They literally could implement a fully Islamic system if they wanted to. They just, Imam Khomeini said, he's called Imam. I mean, it's not my Imam, but anyway, that's his title. So the Imam Khomeini said that you can't have a complete change overnight. It has to be a gradual revolution. So he says the Islamic revolution, he says, is ongoing, and it has gradually. That was his project. Problem is you can't implement Islam partially. It creates contradiction and doesn't work. So they tried initially to ban interest-based banking, but they didn't know, they didn't deal with the fiat currency system, the paper-based money system, and a whole bunch of international monetary system. They were still attached to it because their currency was still attached to it. There's a whole bunch of problems. They tried to ban it, or they said, well, maybe we'll ban it, and then they said, oh, we can't ban it. Okay, so maybe only state banks is prohibited, but the personal, private-owned banks, you can have riba, right? And then eventually they reversed the law. You must examine it for yourself, right? Okay, so when you then meet me again to have this exchange, even though you have a different opinion to me, the publicly of the official adopted hukum, you know what it is, and so you're going to now say, okay, well, I expect him to allow me to see this and check for myself, because this is what we've all agreed on as going to be the practical law, even if we don't all agree it's the most strongest opinion. Okay, that's why you have human governments in the first place, and that's how we resolved it in the past. It's not a big issue. It's not rocket science. It's this, but Islam has been so mystified to us. So this thing we can't see clearly, that these simple things are mysteries. Like, oh, how are we all gonna agree? And it's like, but straightforward. Every society does exactly the same thing. You know. So we just do the same thing with Islam, which is the Khalifa adopts an opinion. That's it. And there was a great analogy about, because you might say, well, how will we have unity if someone says, well, I believe it's a strong opinion, so I'm not going to follow even the Khalifa because his opinion is weak, so I shouldn't follow weak opinions. Well, in the Salah, before you do ruku, before you go into sajda, you have to recite a surah of the Quran. You start with Surah Fatiha, yes? It's fard. Your Salah will not be completed, will not be perfected, and not be accepted, most likely, if you don't complete reciting Surah Fatiha in every rak'ah, right? Yes, we agree? Did you know there's an exception to that? There's an exception to that rule, okay? If you're in a jama'ah, and the imam leads the prayer, and he recites it faster than you, before you can recite the Surah Fatiha, and he finishes it, then he does takbir, and then goes into ruku. You have to stop where you are and you're reciting Surah Fatiha, and you have to go into ruku with the imam. So following the imam is more important than completing what you thought was a fard on you as an individual Muslim to recite the Surah Fatiha. Same thing as the Islamic political system. Unity of the imam is more important than your particular opinion, or even an individual obligation upon you to some extent. Of course, the imam can't tell you to commit kufr acts. If he gives you a haram order, you can't follow it, of course. But basically, unity with him is like, it trumps everything else. It precedes all other fara'id, or the public fara'id, or the mu'amalat fara'id, and even some individual fara'id too. Okay, question. You have a question?
This is